उन्हें पूरी बात समाप्त कर दी गया। नाउ बानू जी प्लीज।
For the first time since 1984, no winter session of the Parliament. Government makes it official.
As far as this winter is concerned, COVID is more dangerous. So many leaders have given their opinion and advised me that anyhow we have completed very recently in September, end of the September, and you can go for the budget session itself. This is the opposition leaders' suggestion.
Session cancelled due to coronavirus. Plans to prepone the budget session to January. Opposition is furious.
मैंने ये मांग किया था कि शीतकालीन सत्र बुलाया जाए, क्योंकि काफी सारे मुद्दा देश भर में चर्चित हो रहे हैं, विमर्श हो रहे हैं, और उसमें खासकर हमारे किसान आंदोलन, ये सिर्फ देश में ही नहीं, दुनिया की बहुत सारे देश में ये फैले गए हैं।
मैं सबसे पहले
उत्तर भारत में किसानों का
Opposition claims a sinister strategy to avoid debate questions. Elections, pujas, rallies being held. Why no parliament session? Top focus on to the point.
So that's the biggest controversy today. The government made it official, no winter session. The pandemic is peaking, cannot afford to have a winter session. The opposition says this is a sinister plot to divert attention from the farmers' protest, is to escape from debate questions. Let's cut across before we go to our panelists, to my colleague Polumi, who's joining us right now for more. Polumi, it seems now that the budget session is going to be preponed. Of course, in the background of this massive controversy, the opposition accusing government of trying to evade questions.
That's right. Today, in fact, Mr. Prahlad Joshi, who's the Union Parliamentary Affairs Minister, has conveyed to Mr. Adhi Chaudhary in response to his letter about the winter session that given concerns around the spread of COVID-19 and a spurt in possible spurt in cases in the season right now, it's a decision that the government has taken after having spoken, he says, to leaders of all political parties and having, taken their views and suggestions on board, that the winter session of Parliament will not happen, but they will indeed go ahead with the budget session of Parliament in January 2021. Remember, the session had to be curtailed the last time round itself during, when, of course, it was convened in the middle of the pandemic, and the situation obviously was something which was very, in a very difficult way, managed by the government, and members of parliament continue to express apprehensions. This time the government has decided they will not conduct the winter session of parliament. There will be a budget session, though, in January 2021.
All right, appreciate you joining us, Polumi. Thank you for that quick update. Let's cut across to our panelists, because the opposition, Sudesh Verma, said, okay, I have Sudesh Verma from the Bharatiya Janata Party, spokesperson. Rajiv Gowda from the Congress will be joining us in a very short while. And Javed Ansari, senior journalist, joins us. Sudesh Verma, political rallies are being allowed, elections are being allowed, pujas are being allowed. Why no parliament session, sir?
No, it's not that these are being allowed at the scale which it is happening. And there are emergencies you can't help. Otherwise, social distancing as a norm should be maintained, In Delhi, I've seen people paying fine of 2,000 rupees just because they're not wearing mask inside their car if there are more than one person. Just imagine that this is a pandemic situation, December being the likely probability that is likely to go up. And in that situation, Parliament decides. The government, the government has decided in the best, likelihood of...
Mr. Verma, did you go to the BJP headquarters when the Bihar election was won by your party? Did you see the number of people there, sir? Did you see those images? Sir, did you see the images of the Hyderabad municipal campaigning?
Yes.
Did you see the rallies there? Do you see what's happening right now in Bengal? The campaigning? All of that is allowed?
Preeti, the last session that happened in September, you know how it happened? There used to be Lok Sabha session in the morning and Rajya Sabha session in the evening for both the houses because of social distancing norm. It was used for conducting the session. And even in that situation, when social distancing was maintained, 30 parliamentarians had fallen victim to COVID, and more than 100 staff, parliamentary staff had fallen victim. So just imagine, this is the scale, and now the pandemic is there. There is a likelihood of vaccine coming. So it is government has taken a decision to save lives of people, you know, lives of parliament, so the parliamentarians, so that they are safe.
All right,
and
but Sudesh Verma, what happened to कि हमको कोरोना के साथ जीना सीखना पड़ेगा? What happened to you took us back to the monsoon session. I'll take you back on what happened in the summer session, sir. What happened in March, where every political party, I remember Derek O'Brien screaming, saying that there is a pandemic. Why are we continuing with this? But the government continued with that session. A government was brought down.
Yes, Preeti, you are right. We are into second wave. And God forbid if there is a third wave, the situation will be very, very bad. And pandemic prediction is there. So you have seen what happened in Delhi. The figure went above 4,000, was touching 5,000, isn't it? Now it is coming under control. In such a situation, we have to take precaution so that the situation does not go out of control. It's a new situation, and the government should be appreciated for taking precaution, isn't it? And all the things can come later when the budget session starts. We have said that budget session should be advanced, isn't it? The government has said that, so there should be no problem.
Okay, Rajiv Gowda, what's the problem? The government's not trying to run away from any farmers' debate. They're trying to safeguard the health of your own party leaders, sir, by cancelling the session.
See, there are 2-3 things that I want to bring to your attention. First, you know, our friend mentioned that the government is trying to safeguard people and that there's another wave. Well, the budget session is scheduled within 1.5 months. Does this imply that that's going to be pushed forward? Can the nation afford that? The whole point during the last session was that arrangements had been made. If MPs caught COVID, it was not from Parliament and the arrangements that were made there. It was from their other activities and their other interactions. And that's not going to stop. Will the BJP and the leaders and the government stop going and political campaigns? Will they stop engaging with people in the way that they've been doing with massive rallies and things like that? That's they are the ones who are going to be massively in danger, and we don't want that. In fact, I wish my friend JP Nadda a speedy recovery. Right. So basically, the point here is that there is a massive farmers' agitation on the outskirts of Delhi, and there are farmers who are expressing their anger with the process of the farm laws and the outcome, whatever has been passed. And they are, so they're willing to sacrifice their health. So at least some 10 people have already died, including one farmer today, basically because of the cold that they're braving to get the point across to Delhi Darbar. But the Delhi Darbar doesn't want to listen. They want to prolong that agony. They want to wear them out. They want to see more farmers die. This is what is actually behind this whole exercise of postponing a winter session that was there every year, and for which both the speaker and the chairman had made arrangements in the last session. Okay, so there is no excuse. They're not doing it. They're protecting themselves. If you want to go and get vaccines from England and give that to all our MPs, and the Parliament needs to function. We need to have checks and balances, and let's ensure that action in response to the farmers' agitation is taken immediately.
Okay, all right, Mr. Gowda, stay with me. Yes, Mr. Verma, if you'll just bear with me, I want to bring in our third panelist. Yes, sir, bear with me for a minute. Just want to bring in our third panelist, Javed Ansari, also into this conversation. Mr. Ansari, since 1984, for the first time, we will not have a winter session. But this time, the government says we're in the midst of a pandemic. There could be another wave. Best to postpone.
Look, Preeti, the government's reasoning would carry conviction if this was extended to larger gatherings as well. You pointed out very aptly the Prime Minister addressed a gathering of over 40 to 50,000 people at the BJP headquarters. I didn't see any social distancing. In Bengal, the campaigning is going on. My good friend, Mr. Nadda, has contracted COVID. I pray to God that he recovers expeditiously. In Bihar, election went on at full pelt. In Hyderabad, electioneering went on. So the government should not limit itself to just stopping parliamentarians from meeting, from parliament to from meeting, but they should extend this measure, given the enormity of the situation, to all political rallies, to religious congregations, to weddings and all celebratory functions that are happening across town. I was just rushing back to my house in time for your show, and there was a huge traffic jam on BRT. So there people are up and about in the markets. There is no social distancing. So for the government to carry conviction, for the government's position to carry conviction, this has to be enforced across board, not just in piecemeal manner.
All right. Yes, Mr. Verma, you wanted to respond. Thank you for the patience.
Yes,
Go ahead,
it is not a police state, you know, and even on farmers' agitation, I would rather expect that Congress and other opposition parties would act responsibly and appeal to the farmers to go back. There is no point agitating like this in this chilling winter, which is very dangerous for the pandemic. It is likely to increase. Government made arrangement for COVID tests, but farmers refused. You have seen that. And they said, no, you can't test us. Nothing will happen to us. In that situation, government cannot force. We are in democracy. And you must understand that if you're going to enforce something, the same people will come and say why you are doing so. Government is trying to break the agitation. So it's a catch-22 situation. And we have appealed to people that maintain social norm. People are being fined also in Delhi. So you see, we can always, blame the government for that. But you must also see the way we are trying to implement the norms now, that there is a possibility of the third wave which doctors are talking about, because this is a bad situation. Winter is a bad time for this pandemic. So in that situation, if the government takes a call, and it must be appreciated, we should not criticize just for the sake of criticizing it. Yes, we should maintain social norm and we should wear masks. This we are doing in all situations.
Okay, Mr. Verma, before I go back to Mr. Gowda, I want to ask you, so one question that is being raised is that the government is trying to maneuver this session as per their own convenience. They don't want to face the heat on farmers, because let's go back to March this year, which was earlier this year, where every political party kept telling the government that the budget session needs to be concluded, but the government continued with the budget session until the Madhya Pradesh government fell. So that was conducive to the government then. This is not conducive to the government, so no winter session.
No, you see, you can always assign political motives, but that is not the intention. Budget session is a very important session of the government, because that is the policy statement, annual financial statement, and the entire country has to run on that. Otherwise, you have to have a vote on account.
Mr. Verma, farmers are not important? Shouldn't they find a voice in parliament?
Farmers are important. But you see, who is shying away from debate? We are always ready to debate. It's the opposition that walks away, that walks out of debate. After debating, they don't vote. They just walk away, realizing that they don't have the majority. It's a very responsible opposition. Do you think we are shying away from this opposition? We are ready to debate. We are not running away from debate. And the entire country is debating on farmers' issue also. Your channel is debating. We are all debating that. We are trying to persuade farmers to see reason. The country will run on the basis of rationality and logic and what is good for the country. Just because of emotions, you cannot decide on certain legislations passed by parliament. It is backing of the entire country. The government is ready to address all concerns of farmers. And the Congress should appreciate that. We have only implemented what they used to promise, but they are backing out just because of political opportunism.
All right, so may I go back to Mr. Gowda? Mr. Gowda, would you want to come in and respond?
Yes, I have 2-3 points. The first one is your point about the budget session. I was one of those who stood up in Parliament and said that there's a big danger, and this is something that MPs are most vulnerable to, and therefore we should adjourn the budget session early. And minister after minister stood up and said, we have to be brave, we have to confront this, we have to set an example for the nation. And as you pointed out, the moment the Madhya Pradesh government fell, then suddenly they changed course and they said, immediately we're going to adjourn, because they were holding off. They could not, because in Madhya Pradesh, the speaker had said he was not going to convene the assembly because of COVID. So they didn't want to accept that excuse. And it was very transparent. The whole world knows. The second point, Mr. Verma is talking about a government that is willing to debate. How many bills have they actually sent to committees? How many of these bills have actually been debated on the floor of the House? Instead, you have seen bills of tremendous importance and tremendous impact being guillotined, being pushed through. We saw this time and again, and it's the same thing that happened with the farmers' bills. If at all, there was an article recently which said all the objections that are being raised on the farmers' issues were raised people were raising that in the House and nobody listened. And now we have to force farmers to step onto the streets and agitate in this extremely dangerous conditions. That's what the government has forced them into.
Okay.
So basically, one more.
Mr. Gowda.
BJP is talking with a forked tongue, as usual.
Okay. But Mr. Gowda, why shouldn't you be...
One second. Mr. Fadnavis is making a noise that the Maharashtra Assembly is meeting only for 6 days. At least it's meeting, right? Here, these guys are running away from the battlefield because they're not ready to face the farmers and respond to their concerns. No. They want to torture the farmers further.
Okay, but Mr. Gowda, why shouldn't the Congress be accused of speaking in a forked tongue? You had the monsoon session. It was the Congress which gave the go-ahead for the session to conclude. You only saw the farmer protest peak right now and you want to make a quick buck off it. That is what is being attributed to the Congress's cause.
We are talking on behalf of the farmers and not on behalf of one party or the other. And I'm here as a spokesperson for not just the Congress, but for the entire opposition, which is aghast at the way this government is callously responding to the legitimate demands of farmers.
Okay.
So I wouldn't go along with what you're saying at all, and basically point out that the opposition to the farm laws and the lack of consideration was very evident, and we asked for those bills to be sent to select committee, and that was not allowed.
All right, okay. Do come in. I'd like to go back to your counterpart, and I want to bring in Javed in the end as well. Yes, Mr. Verma, go ahead.
I have just 2 points to make, which will clear the situation. One, in my earlier incarnation as a media person, I have covered Parliament for a very, very long period of time. And this is not the first time that a bill has not been sent to select committee and straight away it has been put to voting. It's not the first time. It is the urgency of the situation that decides whether the government wants to send it to select committee. Already there were a lot of talk happened, commissions and recommendations of many committees. And on that basis, an ordinance was passed. There was urgency. That is how the legislations happened. Second is the point of assessment. You see, assessment of the government about a pandemic depends upon international situation and the feedback one is getting. The assessment can always change. I spoke that today the assessment is that we should not take risk because we are very, very close to winning over this pandemic, isn't it? Because of the possibility of the vaccine, because of it is the graph going down. So let's keep our guards on, and in that context the steps should be appreciated, not just opposed for opposition's sake.
All right, okay, Javed, I want to bring you in on all of this. Would you reckon the controversy wouldn't have peaked as much if the government had not pushed the farm laws in the monsoon session through ordinances?
Look, the government would have been well advised, and I don't need to say this. Mr. Amit Shah, the second most powerful man in this dispensation, has admitted that perhaps they rushed it through. They ought to have consulted and taken more views of the stakeholders on board. So, that nails the argument. That rests my case. I don't need to say much about it. In any case, whether it is the farm laws or laws, whatever laws, it's always best to go through the consultative process to ensure that all the stakeholders are heard. Ultimately, the government has its way. The thumb rule of Parliament is that the government has its way, but others must be allowed to have their say. So this ends on something as fundamental as farm laws. The government would have done itself a great deal of good had it consulted the stakeholders, farmers' organizations, and then brought this forward. This bill, it has a huge majority. It also has in the Lok Sabha and also has now a majority in the Rajya Sabha. So it would have ultimately passed, but it would have been better had it been first gone through the consultative process and then passed.
All right, Mr. Gowda, would you think the opposition would have done better, especially your party, the Congress, if it would have dealt differently during the monsoon session on the way it acted out on, especially where the ordinances were pushed?
See, the monsoon session was cut short by 8 working days. There were about...
But the Congress gave the approval, Mr. Gowda, for it to be cut short.
Yes, because of the pandemic, and that's one of the concerns that we've all had. But the basic point here is, the government, we are also a cooperative opposition. and we want to make sure that things function. But many things have changed since then. We have had parliamentary committees and joint parliamentary committees meeting every day. You've had elections from panchayats to parliament by-elections across the country. So obviously, everyone's taking part in political activity. And as Javed Bhai pointed out, the Prime Minister is busy addressing huge rallies. So how can you do one thing and say this doesn't apply to Parliament, especially at a time when there is a mega crisis facing our farmers and they are agitating on the borders of Delhi.
Mr. Verma, I'll give you the last word. Sir, I'm a little short on time. I want to give 20 seconds to Mr. Verma, if you'd allow me.
Away from the battlefield.
Right, Mr. Verma,
see,
there are farmers right now on the streets. If they can be out on the streets, they are protesting. Instead of attributing motive to that, shouldn't they get a voice in Parliament? If they can sit on the street and protest, maybe the government can address that concern in Parliament.
No, government is ready to talk to farmers. We have said we are going to talk to them. They are also ready. We are addressing their concerns. There will be no problem. If political parties do not try to settle their score with the government, riding on the shoulders of farmers. As you rightly said, monsoon session was curtailed because of pandemic. Now the situation is worse, so better. In the assessment of the government is worse.
Okay, gentlemen, I need to close the show. Appreciate you all three for joining us. Well, I would reckon the debate will continue. The farmers are still on the streets. They're going to escalate their agitation. But the fact is, there will be no winter session for that protest or that agitation to echo in. We leave it for our viewers to decide whether the government should have gone ahead or err on the side of caution, where they are saying that it's a pandemic, we must avoid it. We'll prepone the budget session. Appreciate you all for joining us. Thank you. Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.